It's the Church of Jesus Christ.
Evolution is a scientific theory which holds that life has developed gradually over long periods of time through an unguided, blind process of random mutation and natural selection.
Darwin first proposed this theory, which has been modified and refined over the subsequent century and a half. It is considered to be fact among the scientific establishment, but does it best account for the evidence?
If you look at almost every major field of biology, there are problems and challenges that are raised against the standard evolutionary paradigm.
Indeed, there are massive gaps in evidence that should be present if the Darwinian account of origins is true. For instance, in Darwin's theory, small random gene mutations appear in organisms over time, which confer a survival advantage and are retained and passed down, a process called natural selection. Over millions or even billions of years, Darwin theorized these small changes would multiply and lead to all the variation of biological life we see today. If so, the fossil record would be expected to show very tiny transitional differences over enormous periods of time. But what do the fossils actually show?
The fossils do show us something about the history of life. There's no doubt about it. But do they illustrate Darwinian evolution? Actually, they don't. Darwin himself considered the fossil record a big problem for his theory. Because in his theory, each species turns into a new species by very gradual, small steps. The fossil record doesn't show that.
Stephen Jay Gould of Harvard, one of the foremost paleontologists in the world before his death in 2002, was an avowed evolutionist. But he once noted, the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. And the fossil record is only one of the problems for Darwin's account of evolution. Another major difficulty is the overwhelming evidence for design in nature.
In 1859, when Darwin wrote The Origin of Species, we knew very little about what the cell, the simplest unit of biological life, was made of. So you actually have inside cells an information storage, transmission, and processing system that makes life possible. The complexity of what's going on in the cell, and we don't mean complexity in the sense of randomness or a jumble. We mean integrated complexity. We mean informational complexity, like sophisticated machinery and digital code that builds that machinery. That's what's going on inside life, and nobody in the 19th century had an inkling of any of this.
In other words, there is a massive amount of sophisticated, complex information, much like computer code, embedded in the human genome. So, how did it get there? Darwinian scientists face a major problem when they try to explain this as the product of random chance and mutation, as neo-Darwinian theory requires.
Bill Gates has said that DNA is like a software program, only much more complex than any we've ever written. And that's a really suggestive quotation because we know from our experience that computer code comes from programmers. It takes a programmer to make a program. It takes a writer to write a paragraph. It takes a scribe to make an inscription. It takes a broadcaster to convey information across the radio. So information is, in our experience, always the result of a prior mind, the activity of a prior intelligence.
To me, the smoking gun is information in the DNA. Information in DNA, and this is not something that you have to have a scientific PhD to understand. I think it's pretty common sense that information comes from a mind.
When you stop and you think about the complexity of the universe and how everything fits together, and then you look at something like the second law of thermodynamics, entropy, which says that things naturally move toward disorganization. And now you're going to say there's a big explosion and everything comes perfectly organized. I mean, how ridiculous is that? And it goes against all scientific principle.
As a growing number of scientists are discovering, the holes in the fossil record and the presence of complex programming information in our cells points us inexorably toward God.
Design is the most plausible explanation for what we see in life because every aspect of the higher level organization of living systems looks like what you'd expect from an intelligent agent and the opposite of what you'd expect from a blind, undirected process.